So it might be part of that same battle with, in order to get any of this stuff to work, we need more and better critical thinkers in society in general, right? Maybe that should be the main focus, is getting all of our youth, all of our politicians, as many people as possible to think more critically in general.
Yeah, that's
And
the statistical approach to
that's
fixing it, because then there's statistically higher chance that whatever is anybody doing anywhere, there will be a higher percentage of people who are
right.
critical thinkers in there. So that's
Right.
part of it. It's just not very targeted.
That's the one
Uh,
prong. That's the one prong of
yeah,
the
but
of
it's
this.
yeah. It definitely is the right approach. It's just like currently the obstacle to that are educational systems who are really not wired to teach people critical thinking. So
Right.
I've watched videos about education from Urza, which is a famous Czech libertarian, and it's especially famous or very poignant in the Czech Republic, which is not a libertarian country at all.
Mm.
So he's like facing a lot of resistance. And he had made a lecture about like his friend who has a special school for kids, which is trying to be a very free school, like without all the like forced BS that you get in most schools. And
Mm.
it's very difficult in the Czech Republic because in our law, the what do you call it in English? Like the fact that like, the kids have to go to school is mandatory by law,
Yeah.
and what the school is highly regulated. So and very centralized. Like they try to not be the worst because yeah, it's centralized that the Ministry of Education has full control over schools and what like they do. But the schools have some sort of wiggle room where the individual school can change its curricula. It's just rarely done because they don't have the people at the school don't have the time to create their own curricula. So it's mostly just everybody has the same curricula and nobody's really doing anything different too much. That you would have to have a highly involved school headmaster who then could use their power to actually change what the school is doing to some extent. So it's
Mm.
possible. In some few cases it happens, not very often. So essentially what he argues for is that you need to have the ability to essentially have free choice of education, including what you would call like a non-education. I think the correct term in the field is called deschooling type of upbringing, because essentially his arguments are like it's impossible, literally impossible for a kid not to learn as they
Right.
live and do stuff. So the only question is like how do you structure their learning or motivate them in like nudge them in particular directions if you as a country you need to like
Yeah.
have a workforce trained or something. But
Right.
individually, like if you had just a kid playing computer games, they have every chance to develop into a great programmer of computer games, which is a great career. So
Yep.
it's not really because they would be doing something they want, they're passionate about, and they will learn it. Like they will
Yeah.
be learn how to be something in that field, very
Yeah.
probably.
I think as long as everybody gets at least a bare minimum of, reading skills, math skills, and then
That's
science
another
to
thing.
some extent, right?
Yeah.
As long as you have those three basic courses at least, and then I guess history, politics a little bit, just so they can understand a
Yeah.
little bit of what's going on in the world. Those are all kind of important things that I think everybody should have at least a taste of.
Yeah, but that's
So,
the essentially that's the ancient Greek model of trivium, or in more advanced form quadrivium, which essentially was 3-4 years. Because like it's you, that's what you would do. Like you would learn to read, write, and then do basic math,
yeah,
and the quadrivium. If you want advanced, they also had like astronomy, like or astrology back then, literature or a culture, something like or like you say history, something cultural,
right,
and that would like be extra year. And, or music, of course, like because that's an important part also of the development, and sports, of course, they
yeah,
did a lot of sports, ancient
right,
Greeks, and you get people this way who are like all the famous generals and scientists and stuff, because yeah, they learned the basic like right off the bat, and then they essentially moved whatever direction they wanted with private tutors or apprenticeship or essentially like anything that they followed just after they could basically read, write, and compute and speak to some extent. Rhetoric, I think, was part of it as well. So once you had got the basic, then of course in the like Ursa's libertarian vision of how it would work is that essentially you would have like private courses and like not necessarily whole schools, but like many more tutors and courses would spring up
yeah,
in the private market, which would be priced on the level at which people can afford stuff in the market, because as long as there is demand, somebody will do something for the amount of money that people have in the
right.
society.
Yeah,
His example is like even in India, in slums, they just like do it for a little small amount of money, but they still do it in the community because the community just wants it done and has some money that they will want to spend on that, and somebody just needs money so they will do
Yeah.
it. So like it's not like you would have no schools in the society, this just wouldn't happen, and it's not like people wouldn't learn because the human brain is really wired to do stuff and learn. So it
Oh,
was just
okay.
so what I'm just trying to say is that if you want to have like more critical thinking, then you really need to make the main model that's most common in the world not mandatory.
Yeah.
Because it's really
Okay.
uncritical. It's basically like you will learn how to obey and not question is the whole
It,
thing of the system.
in my mind, the best way to do it from the Canadian perspective is to have a certain amount of dollars attributed to every child's education. And then that parent or child can decide where to spend those dollars, whether to spend it on a private school, to spend it on
Sure.
personal homeschooling, or to spend it on public school.
That
And I think
yeah.
if you were to do that, then the public schools would very, very quickly disappear, and the private schools and personal schools would become the norm.
Yeah, or just
Um,
like or the public schools, like some public schools, if they adapt it and actually try, because that's the thing, then they would be motivated to
yeah,
be
they'd have
good.
to compete. There'd be competition.
Yeah, like to give people service they want. And because
Yeah,
now it's a system where it doesn't matter. If the person doesn't want to be there, then by law they literally have to be there.
yeah.
So no incentive to do well on any level.
You could even start with it something like say, because it costs about $13,000 a year to keep a child in the public school system, Canadian. I'm not sure what that is in euros, but it's a lot of money. So if they even just did half of that, say, and say, we'll give you half of that to put towards your private or
Yeah.
homeschooling. And as long as you pass these certain basic tests, and we know that you're getting the basic minimum, go to town. Do whatever you want with that money. We want you to use that money to educate yourself.
Yeah,
And
I think that's a good hybrid solution between like full-on libertarian and the current model that even be very, very acceptable to most people.
yeah,
In Czech Republic, he also mentioned, Urza, in the lecture, there's also another number that's like how much money it is for per student a year. And if you gave that money or just a portion of that money to each student to spend on their own, then
yeah,
each student would be able to afford lecturers for the whole year, like private
exactly.
tutors even. Because I
Private
know I've
tutors.
been private tutor, I know how they're priced. You can have enough of education for that amount of money that it costs to have a student in the
Yeah,
system. It's just there's one issue that because again I like your optimism, but it's like usually in the like systems, many of the systems are broken in some way and need fixing. And in this case, it's like okay, just the basic test of basic ability. There will still have to be a centralized authority who would be deciding that, and
there
that
would
will
be.
still steering people to waste their time on what then most definitely won't just be the necessary minimum or what everybody should have, but something
Sure.
annoying that some sort of person from a school who was like really like the classical school would think that everybody should know. So
Yeah.
that's a bit dangerous, a little bit dangerous.
A little bit, but you
Uh,
do
yeah.
want to make sure they're not just wasting the money and doing nothing, or the parents are just stealing the money and not teaching
Yeah,
their
but
kids
that's the
anything.
thing. Like you can do
That's the worst
that.
case.
You don't have need a test of any skill for that. You can just have like a proof that like make the money literally be spendable only for educational services. You have like this model like with for paying for food. It's like this is a kind of models like with employment
I like
work
that. Food
all the time.
stamps, food stamps.
So that's
Yeah,
one thing. So the money is
yeah,
only good for education, so that it cannot be spent
yeah,
for something else. And then everybody who's just they would have to like just demonstrate that they've paid it, that they've spent some percentage of it, so they just did something
yes.
with it, and so that the kid went somewhere and something happened. Because on that level, it almost like yes, there's no system where everybody would be learning. Because even in the current system, just because the kids are forced to go to school, somebody like many kids learn nothing because they don't
Mhm.
want to, because the school doesn't work. It's just complete waste of time. So you can't have
Yeah,
a system where you have guaranteed that every child has learned. I think it's actually literally physically impossible because
yeah,
again, the bell curves. Like you would have
yeah,
always majority doing well, some doing really well, some doing really poorly, no matter the
yeah.
system. You're just shifting the balances somewhat. So in
Right.
this case, you would just, for instance, you would eliminate a lot of bullying because like you would essentially end mandatory segregation by age. And that's the
Right.
main contributing factor to bullying, because if all the kids are the same age, that's when the bullying makes the most sense to be happening at all. If the school is more free, then the kids learn who are of different ages, and in such cohorts, it's much less. It makes much less sense in the social dynamic for anybody to be able to be bullying anybody else in the. So you get like a improved psychological benefits, and what you also get is that you actually will create a real plurality of thought in the society, as opposed to the completely uncritical. This is just the one thing, one way things are, and you have to memorize it. There will be a test, Because that's,
Yeah.
again, that's the big problem in that is that unless that kind of education includes a solid element of rhetoric, then the kids really have no experience their whole young life with critical thinking at all,
Right.
because they just listen like authority tells me something, I need to, if do not believe it, I have to obey it. That's like
Right.
literally the most uncritical attitude anybody can have. And also, if the education is just done for them and controlled by somebody else, then they also don't learn personal responsibility and ability to even like analyze their own priorities, control their own life type stuff. So again, the more individualistic attitude that you would
Right.
need to be a good critical thinker. So that's why I'm saying, like, if you want to create more critical thinkers, you really
That's a
need
good way.
to decentralize education.
I like
In
that.
any number of
I
models would be
yes.
improvement.
I've been a huge fan of that very concept for 20 years now. And my son as well, he's going into grade 11 this year, but last year he really, really wanted to just kind of drop school entirely, right, and just kind of study on his own. And I was pretty supportive of the idea. I was like, look, if you want to do that, just kind of do some research, figure out exactly how you're going to do it. He was able to just kind of go and research it. And then he decided himself, well, you know what, I think I'll just stick with it for 2 more years anyway, and then I'll just do my own thing, decide whether I want to go to university or not. So I liked how he kind of made his own decision to stick with the program, and even though he had the option to kind of leave if he was able to kind of show how what he would study or what he would do. So it's great to give everybody choice. You teach them the best principles you can and let them make their own decision.
If you want to, like, of course, improve general people's ability to think critically, then you have to start with education and do something radical with education, because clearly it's not working. Like,
Right.
I don't get people who are trying to defend it still when
Yeah.
every scientific research of any aspect of the school is showing that it's not you doing the stuff that works. Getting the kids to wake up very early has been scientifically proven to be a very detrimental thing for health, psychological, physical, for the ability to learn or whatever. It's still being done because it's always been done this way. So shut up.
It's hard.
So, and there's like a whole bunch of research that's ignored. So like another thing you would have to do with the schools is make them really responsive to research and innovation, because they're really one of the biggest systems that have like essentially zero innovation. Like, again, the innovation is like, we'll bring tech into it, we'll buy projectors and we'll buy computers into the classroom and stuff, and those things, again, scientifically proven to have very little to no effect, because that's not the important part. That's never been the important part. It's just you can like make a big business about it, but it's not helpful. It's like, it's not detrimental. Like, okay, if your school has a computer, fine. It's nice. Like, people have been,
Okay.
but that's the thing. People have been able to like learn any kind of anything before computers, from
Yeah.
teachers
So
who knew it. So it's not necessary at all.
absolutely, I absolutely agree.